I'm Carlton, 32 years old, a self-taught software engineer who never fit the mold my family created. Tonight, I sit across from my father at our family dinner table, watching his lips curl into a sneer. "You'll die penniless without our support," he says with absolute certainty. My sister Rachel laughs, adding, "Don't forget, he still sleeps on hand-me-down sheets." They have no idea I just finalized a tech deal worth 7 figures. I smile quietly, excusing myself from the table. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you want to learn a powerful lesson about family perseverance and the true meaning of success. Growing up in our upper-middle-class home in Seattle, expectations hung in the air as tangibly as the expensive artwork my parents displayed. My father, Walter, worked as a bank executive, meticulously dressed in tailored suits that cost more than what most people earned in a week. His reputation in the financial world was impeccable, built on calculated decisions and unwavering confidence. My mother, Diana, balanced her career as a respected doctor with maintaining our family's social standing. Our 4-bedroom house in an exclusive neighborhood represented everything my parents valued: status, achievement, and appearances. 5 years my senior, my sister Rachel embodied everything my parents wanted in their children. From kindergarten through high school, she collected achievements like trophies: perfect grades, debate team captain, student council president, and first chair violin in the youth symphony. When Rachel entered the room, my parents' faces lit up with pride. When college acceptance letters arrived, she had her pick of Ivy League schools, eventually choosing Princeton with a partial scholarship. Meanwhile, I existed in her shadow, not deliberately cast there by Rachel herself, but by the constant comparisons my parents couldn't help making. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the unofficial family motto directed at me. My report cards, while showing A's and B's, never matched Rachel's perfect streak. When I brought home a B+ in algebra, my father sighed heavily, examining the paper as if searching for hidden potential. "Carlton, this is simply not good enough," he'd say, his disappointment thick in the air. "Intelligence runs in this family. You're just not applying yourself." The truth was, traditional education never clicked for me. Sitting still for hours memorizing facts that seemed disconnected from real life felt like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. My mind worked differently. I saw patterns and connections where others followed linear paths. But in my family's world, diverging from the established road to success meant failure. Everything changed on my 12th birthday when Uncle Jim, always the family rebel, gave me my first computer. A bulky beige box that hummed to life in my bedroom, becoming my portal to a world that finally made sense. While my parents saw it as a distraction, I discovered programming through online tutorials and forums. Logic, problem-solving, creativity, the computer demanded all of these from me, and I happily obliged. Hours disappeared as I taught myself basic coding, creating simple programs that solved math problems or generated patterns. For the first time, learning felt natural, exciting even. I'd rush home from school to continue where I'd left off, my homework often forgotten until my mother's stern reminder. "The computer is a tool, not a toy," my father would lecture. "It won't get you into a good college." One memory stands out with painful clarity: Rachel's high school graduation. As valedictorian, she delivered a flawless speech about ambition and excellence. At the celebration dinner afterward, my father raised his glass, his face beaming with pride. "To Rachel, who has exceeded every expectation and made this family proud," he toasted. Then, his eyes sliding briefly to me, he added, "And to Carlton, who still has time to find his direction." The table fell silent momentarily before conversation resumed, but the damage was done. At 15, I understood my place in the family hierarchy. That night, alone in my room, surrounded by the soft glow of my computer screen, I made a silent promise to myself. I would find my own path, one that didn't require their approval or understanding. I would succeed on my terms, even if they never saw the value in it. Throughout high school, I maintained decent grades, enough to keep my parents from completely giving up on me, but never enough to truly impress them. Meanwhile, I devoted every spare moment to learning programming languages, building websites for local businesses, and connecting with online communities of self-taught developers. My room became a strange hybrid college penance. My parents hopefully hung on walls alongside posters of tech innovators I admired. Two worlds that never quite reconciled, much like my dual existence, the son my parents wished I would become versus the person I actually was. By senior year, when college applications loomed, the tension reached a breaking point. My parents had mapped out my future, a business degree from their alma mater, followed by a sensible career in finance, or possibly law. The path was clear-tested by generations before me. The path was suffocating. "We've worked hard to give you these opportunities," my mother reminded me during yet another discussion about college choices. "Do you think we pushed ourselves through medical and business school just so you could throw away your potential?" I couldn't make them understand that I wasn't throwing away anything, I was trying to find it. The disconnect widened, creating a gulf between us that would only grow in the coming years. Fall came, and with it my reluctant entrance into Worthington University's finance program, my father's choice, not mine. The campus sprawled with historic buildings and manicured lawns that had witnessed generations of ambitious young people finding their way. For me, it felt like entering a prison of expectations. My first semester passed in a blur of economic theories and accounting principles that never quite connected with me. I sat in lecture halls watching professors diagram financial markets while my mind wandered to algorithms and code structures. At night, while my roommate Brad socialized at fraternity parties, I hunched over my laptop teaching myself Python and JavaScript through online courses. "Are you coming to the mixer tonight?" Brad would ask already, knowing my answer. "Got a project to finish," I'd reply, never clarifying that the project wasn't for any official class. My grades reflected my divided attention. Mediocre at best, failing at worst. When the first semester ended, my father's phone call carried the weight of generations of disappointment. A C- in Introduction to Finance. His voice remained calm, which somehow felt worse than yelling. "Carlton, we're not paying $40,000 a year for C-minuses. The truth hovered unspoken between us. I wasn't trying not at what they valued anyway. My real education happened between midnight and 4 a.m. building applications and solving coding challenges that lit up parts of my brain college never touched. The turning point came during my sophomore year when I enrolled in an elective computer science course. Professor Scott Alexander noticed me immediately, not because I raised my hand or stood out, but because I finished our lab assignments in half the allotted time, adding extra features and optimizations no one had asked for. After class one day, he called me to his desk as other students filed out. "You've done this before," he said, not a question, but an observation. "Self-taught," I admitted. "Since I was 12. Professor Alexander removed his glasses, studying me with genuine curiosity. "Then why are you majoring in finance?" No one had ever asked me that directly. The question hung in the air, demanding an honest answer I'd never allowed myself to voice. "Because it's what my family expects," I finally said. "And what do you expect from yourself, Carlton?" That conversation changed everything. Professor Alexander became the mentor I never knew I needed, providing resources, challenges, and most importantly, validation that my path had value. For the first time, someone in education saw my potential rather than my failure to conform. Meanwhile, my finance grades continued their downward trajectory. Each failed exam and incomplete assignment drove another nail into the coffin of my parents' dreams for me. The inevitable confrontation came during spring break of my sophomore year. My father's home office had always intimidated me, dark wood, leather-bound books, and framed certificates, announcing his qualifications to judge others' worth. I sat across from him, 20 years old, but feeling like a child awaiting punishment. "Your academic advisor called," he began, shuffling papers on his desk. "You're failing 3 classes. 3, Carlton." "I know. Do you? Do you understand what this means for your future, for all the sacrifices we've made?" The familiar pressure built in my chest, part guilt, part frustration, part unexpressed truth. Something snapped inside me. "I hate finance," I said quietly. "I've always hated it." My father stared as if I'd spoken a foreign language. "This isn't about what you like. It's about building a foundation for success. Your version of success. The argument escalated, years of unspoken tension erupting between us. Words like disappointment, potential, and responsibility flew across the room. My mother entered halfway through, her presence only amplifying the sense that I stood alone against a united front. "I'm dropping out," I finally said, the words bringing unexpected relief. "I'm going to pursue programming." The silence that followed felt absolute. Then my father laughed, a short, dismissive sound that cut deeper than anger. "Programming, playing with computers, that's not a career for someone from this family." "Then maybe I don't belong in this family," I replied, surprising even myself with the finality in my voice. My mother gasped. My father's face hardened into the expression I'd come to dread, disappointment calcified into judgment. "If you walk away from this opportunity, don't expect our support," he said coldly. "Financial or otherwise." Rachel, home from Princeton for break, found me packing my dorm room the next day. She leaned against the doorframe, watching me stuff clothes into duffel bags. "You're really doing this?" she asked, her tone a mixture of curiosity and condescension. "Yeah, I am." "Dad's furious. Mom's been crying." I continued packing, unsure what response she wanted. "You know," she added, examining her manicured nails, "not everyone gets handed the opportunities you're throwing away. Some people would kill for your spot at Worthington." "Then they can have it," I replied. "I'm finding my own way." She laughed, the sound reminiscent of our fathers. "Good luck paying rent with your computer games." That was the last real conversation we had for years. With $2,000 saved from summer jobs and a laptop that had seen better days, I moved into a tiny studio apartment in East Seattle. The building had thin walls, temperamental plumbing, and neighbors whose lives spilled into the hallways at all hours. But it was mine, purchased with independence. I found work at Westside Coffee, a local cafe where the manager, Tony, didn't care about my incomplete degree. The pay barely covered rent and utilities, leaving little for anything else. My diet consisted mainly of ramen noodles, day-old pastries from the cafe, and the occasional splurge on frozen vegetables. At night, after 8-hour shifts of making lattes and cleaning tables, I'd sit cross-legged on my mattress, no bed frame yet, and code until my eyes burned. 6 hours of sleep, then back to the cafe, the routine grinding but purposeful. My big break came 3 months into this new life, through a regular at the cafe, Marcus Jenkins, a developer at a local tech startup. He'd come in every morning, order a black coffee, and work on his laptop for hours. We started talking tech when he noticed me reading a programming book during my break. "What are you building?" he asked one day, genuinely interested. I showed him a small inventory management system I'd created, expecting polite acknowledgement. Instead, he spent an hour discussing potential improvements, impressed by what I'd accomplished without formal training. A week later, he returned with an offer. "We need some contract help with a project." Interested. The pay was modest by industry standards, but felt like a fortune to me. More importantly, it was my first real opportunity to prove myself in tech. That night, I called my parents, hoping the news might bridge the growing gap between us. My mother answered, her voice cautious. I shared my excitement about the contract work, explaining how it validated my choice. "That's nice, Carlton," she said, clearly uncomfortable. "Your father's busy right now, but I'll tell him you called." He never called back. My first professional coding project nearly broke me. Marcus had vouched for my skills, but the client expected expertise I was still developing. The requirements document read like a foreign language, filled with industry jargon and technical specifications I had to Google frantically. Imposter syndrome hit hard, whispering that I'd made a catastrophic mistake leaving college. That first week, I worked at the cafe during the day and coded through the night, averaging 3 hours of sleep. My tiny apartment transformed into a war room, empty coffee cups, scribbled notes, and the constant glow of my laptop screen as I wrestled with unfamiliar frameworks. On day 6 at 3 in the morning, I hit a wall. The application crashed again, displaying error messages that made no sense. Exhaustion and doubt overwhelmed me. I called Marcus, not caring about the hour. "I can't do this," I admitted, voice cracking. "I'm in over my head." His response changed my trajectory. Everyone feels that way on their first real project. The difference between those who make it and those who don't isn't talent. It's persistence. Keep going. Somehow I did. The project launched 2 days late, but functioned better than expected. The client was satisfied. Marcus was vindicated. And I learned a crucial lesson. I could do hard things. That first project led to another, then another. My reputation grew in Seattle's tech community as someone who tackled difficult problems with creative solutions. Within a year, I quit the cafe job to freelance full-time. My rates increased as my portfolio expanded, allowing me to move to a slightly better apartment with actual bedroom furniture. I maintained my frugal lifestyle, investing in better equipment and online courses instead of luxuries. The genesis of what would become my company happened unexpectedly at a local hackathon. 36 hours of coding fueled by energy drinks and pizza, alongside strangers united by the challenge of building something innovative. My team focused on data security, a growing concern as businesses moved operations online. Our solution was elegant but incomplete, a framework for encrypting sensitive information while maintaining accessibility for authorized users. We didn't win the hackathon, but the concept stuck with me, nagging at my thoughts during other projects. A month later, at a tech meetup, I met Jessica Reeves, a cybersecurity specialist with experience at major tech companies. When I described my data security concept, her eyes lit up with recognition of its potential. The biggest problem for small and mid-sized businesses is they can't afford enterprise-level security, she explained over drinks after the meetup. They're using patchwork solutions that leave them vulnerable. What if we created something specifically for them, I suggested. Affordable but comprehensive. That night, SecureSync was conceived, not yet named, but alive in possibility. Jessica and I began meeting regularly, refining the concept in coffee shops and park benches. We identified the gap in the market. Comprehensive security solutions existed for corporate giants, basic options for individuals, but middle-market businesses fell into a dangerous in-between. Reality hit when we calculated startup costs. We needed servers, development tools, legal protection for intellectual property, and enough runway to build before revenue started. The figure daunted me, $300,000 minimum. We should look for investors, Jessica suggested. Your prototype is impressive enough to get attention. The investor circuit proved brutal for someone with my background. My lack of degree became an immediate red flag in pitch meetings. Questions focused less on our technology and more on my qualifications. So you dropped out after 2 years, one potential investor summarized, barely glancing at our presentation. And your partner, while qualified, has no founding experience. Too risky. After the 5th rejection, Jessica's confidence wavered. Maybe we need someone with credentials as a front person, she suggested. No, I insisted. This is our vision. We'll find someone who sees its value. Rejection 17 came from a venture capital firm specializing in tech startups. The meeting seemed promising until the final questions. Stanford MIT, the lead investor, asked about my education. Self-taught, I replied, watching their interest visibly cool. As we packed up our presentation materials, a man approached from the back of the room where he'd observed silently. That encryption method you developed. He said, it's unlike anything I've seen. Did you create that algorithm yourself? His name was Brian Mitchell, an angel investor who'd built and sold 2 tech companies before turning to investment. Unlike the others, he asked questions about our technology's architecture, market strategy, and scaling plans. Education never came up once. 2 weeks later, he offered $250,000 for 20% of our not yet formed company. SecureSync had its first believer. Why us? I asked Brian over dinner, celebrating the investment, after everyone else passed. He smiled, swirling his whiskey. Because I dropped out of college too. Best decision I ever made. Traditional paths produce traditional thinkers. The world doesn't need more of those. With funding secured, we rented a small office space in a converted warehouse furnished with second-hand desks and mismatched chairs. Jessica joined full-time as chief security officer. Marcus left his company to become our lead developer. We hired 2 junior programmers fresh out of coding boot camps, who reminded me of myself, hungry, determined, underestimated. Our team of 5 worked ridiculous hours, fueled by belief in what we were building. The first version of SecureSync took shape, a comprehensive security solution that small businesses could implement without dedicated IT departments. We focused on usability, alongside protection, making security accessible rather than intimidating. After 4 months of development, we had a beta version ready for testing. Finding our first client proved challenging, until Brian introduced us to Westfield Financial, a local investment firm concerned about client data protection. "Try them out," Brian advised the skeptical owner. "If it doesn't work, I'll cover the costs myself." The installation went smoothly. Training their staff took a day. Then we waited, monitoring for issues while continuing development. 2 weeks later, Westfield's owner called. "We had an attempted breach last night," he said, my heart sinking until he continued. "Your system not only blocked it, but provided enough information that we could report it properly. What would it cost to implement this across our 3 locations?" That first sale validated everything: our concept, execution, and my unconventional path. Within 3 months, word spread through Seattle's business community. Our client list grew to 12 companies, then 20, each implementation refined based on feedback. A tech blog featured us in an article about emerging security solutions, describing SecureSync as the rare security product that doesn't require a computer science degree to implement. Though ironically, it was created by developers who prove formal education isn't everything. The article caught attention beyond Seattle. Inquiries came from companies in Portland, San Francisco, even Chicago. We hired 3 more staff to handle growth, moving to larger offices. Our second funding round raised $2 million at a valuation that made my head spin. Then came the crisis that nearly destroyed everything we'd built. A client discovered a vulnerability in our system, not a breach, but a potential entry point that our testing had missed. The news spread quickly through our client base, creating panic about data security. I called an emergency team meeting. "We have 2 options," I told our now 12-person staff. "Downplay this while we fix it quietly, or be completely transparent about the issue and our solution." "Transparency could kill us," our newly hired marketing director warned. "Security companies can't afford vulnerability." I thought about my father, about appearances versus reality, about the values I wanted our company to represent. "We're going with complete transparency," I decided. "We tell every client about the issue, provide immediate patches, and demonstrate why our response makes them safer, not less safe." For 72 hours, I barely slept, personally calling clients, explaining the situation, and walking their teams through implementation of our emergency patch. Some threatened to leave. Most appreciated our honesty. The vulnerability became a defining moment for SecureSync. A follow-up article praised our unprecedented transparency in an industry known for obfuscation, highlighting how our response protocol now served as a model for security incident management. By our second year, SecureSync served over 100 clients across the country. Our team expanded to 30 people, our offices taking up an entire floor of the building. We launched 2 additional products, creating an ecosystem of security solutions that worked seamlessly together. Through it all, I maintained my relatively modest lifestyle. My apartment upgraded again, but remained practical rather than ostentatious. I drove a reliable Honda, rather than the luxury vehicles I could now afford. Every extra dollar went back into the company, or my savings, the memory of financial insecurity still fresh. Despite our growth and recognition in the tech community, I hadn't shared my success with my family. Our communication dwindled to brief holiday calls with my mother and complete silence with my father. Rachel occasionally sent impersonal texts on birthdays. Pride kept me from reaching out, from appearing to seek validation I'd been denied earlier, until the call that would change everything. Brian's investment transformed SecureSync from concept to reality overnight. With $250,000, we secured legitimate office space, a converted industrial loft in downtown Seattle with exposed brick walls and large windows. Nothing fancy, but it gave us the professional environment needed to build something substantial. "First impressions matter," Brian advised as we toured potential locations. "Your office tells clients whether to take you seriously." We signed a 1-year lease on a space that could accommodate growth, then began assembling our core team. Jessica officially joined as Chief Security Officer, bringing expertise and industry connections. Marcus came on board as lead developer, believing in our vision enough to leave his stable job. We hired 2 promising junior developers, Alex, fresh from a coding boot camp, and Priya, a computer science graduate frustrated by traditional corporate environments. Our little team of 5 crowded around whiteboards, mapping out the architecture of what SecureSync would become. Days blurred into nights, takeout containers piling up as we coded, tested, argued, and refined. The energy was electric, we all sensed. We were building something that could matter. The security industry is stuck in 2 modes, I explained during one planning session. Either impossibly complex systems that require specialists, or basic protection that's essentially useless against sophisticated attacks. We're finding the middle ground, robust security made accessible. Development moved faster than expected. Jessica's security expertise complemented my intuitive coding approach. Marcus brought structure to our sometimes chaotic process. Within 3 months, we had a functioning prototype that could detect and neutralize common threats while organizing data access in user-friendly interfaces. But a product without customers remains just an idea. Finding our first client proved challenging. Security requires trust, and trust requires reputation, which we lacked as newcomers. Brian came through again, introducing us to Westfield Financial, a boutique investment firm with approximately 30 employees and growing concerns about client data protection. Their owner, James Westfield, agreed to meet primarily as a favor to Brian. 20 minutes, he said when we arrived at his office. That's all I can spare. 20 minutes became 2 hours as we demonstrated how SecureSync could protect his clients' financial information while simplifying his team's workflow. The technical aspects impressed him, but what sealed the deal was our explanation of regulatory compliance, how our system automatically documented security measures to satisfy industry requirements. How soon can you implement this? He asked our first client acquired. Installing our system at Westfield became our proving ground. We worked around their schedule, trained their staff personally, and addressed every question with patience. When minor issues arose, we resolved them immediately. This hands-on approach established a pattern for client relationships that would define SecureSync's reputation. 2 weeks after implementation, Westfield experienced an attempted breach, a sophisticated phishing attack targeting client financial data. SecureSync detected the unusual activity patterns, quarantined affected systems, and provided detailed forensic information. What could have been a devastating data breach became a non-event. James Westfield became our most vocal advocate, recommending SecureSync to his professional network. Within months, we acquired 10 additional clients, all small to mid-sized financial services companies with similar needs. Each implementation taught us something new, allowing us to refine our product continuously. Word spread through Seattle's business community. A local business journal published a feature on emerging tech companies highlighting SecureSync as an innovative solution to the growing problem of data vulnerability. The article caught the attention of Tech Forward, an influential industry blog with national readership. Their technology reporter, Samantha Wu, requested an interview. Initially hesitant about publicity, Brian convinced me of its value. You're not just selling software, he explained. You're selling confidence. Media coverage builds that. The resulting article, Security Simplified: How SecureSync is Changing Data Protection, provided exposure beyond anything our limited marketing budget could achieve. Inquiries flooded in from companies across the West Coast, many expressing the same frustration: existing security solutions were either too complex or too basic for their needs. With increasing demand came the need for expansion. We hired customer support specialists, additional developers, and our first dedicated sales representative. Our team grew to 15 people, necessitating a move to larger offices. Each new hire was carefully selected not just for skills, but for alignment with our core values: accessibility, transparency, and genuine problem-solving. Our second funding round came 6 months later, raising $2 million from a venture capital firm impressed by our client retention rate and growth trajectory. The valuation placed SecureSync at $12 million on paper, a number that seemed surreal considering our humble beginnings. Don't let the valuation change how you operate, Brian cautioned. It's not real money until someone actually buys the company or you go public. His advice kept us grounded as we expanded. Rather than lavish offices or excessive salaries, we invested in product development and customer service. I maintained my relatively modest lifestyle, remembering too well the financial insecurity of my early days. Growth brought inevitable growing pains. As our client base expanded beyond 100 companies, support requests increased exponentially. Our development team struggled to balance new feature requests with maintaining existing functionality. Technical debt accumulated as we prioritized speed over perfect code architecture. The breaking point came 18 months after founding when a client discovered a significant vulnerability in our encryption protocol. Not a breach, no data was compromised, but a potential entry point that our testing had missed. The client, a healthcare provider with strict regulatory requirements, immediately raised alarms. Our newly hired VP of Marketing suggested downplaying the issue. Frame it as an upgrade rather than a fix, she advised during our emergency meeting. Most clients won't understand the technical details anyway. The suggestion, though common industry practice, felt fundamentally wrong. I thought about the values that drove me to start SecureSync in the first place. The belief that security should be built on genuine protection, not marketing spin. We're going with complete transparency, I decided, overriding objections. We tell every client about the vulnerability, explain how we missed it, and provide immediate patches. Then we use this as an opportunity to improve our testing protocols. For 72 hours straight, our entire team worked to develop, test, and deploy patches. I personally called our 20 largest clients, explaining the situation without technical jargon or excuses. Most appreciated the honesty, though. 3 terminated their contracts immediately. The vulnerability became a defining moment for SecureSync's culture. Rather than hiding our mistake, we published a detailed post-mortem on our company blog explaining the technical issues and our resolution process. We implemented rigorous new testing procedures and hired a third-party security firm to conduct regular audits of our codebase. TechForward published a follow-up article titled, "When Security Companies Fail, SecureSync's Transparent Response Sets New Standard." The piece praised our handling of the crisis, suggesting that true security came not from perfect code but from honest communication and rapid response to inevitable issues. The article resonated with businesses tired of security vendors who overpromised and underdelivered. Our client acquisition rate actually increased following the vulnerability disclosure, with many citing our transparency as a primary reason for choosing SecureSync. By the end of our second year, SecureSync served over 120 clients across multiple industries. Our team had grown to 32 people, occupying an entire floor of a Seattle office building. We launched 2 additional products, SecureSync Monitor for real-time threat detection and SecureSync Compliance for automated regulatory documentation. Our success attracted attention from larger tech companies looking to expand their security offerings. Initial acquisition inquiries arrived, mostly exploratory conversations about whether we might consider selling. Though flattering, these discussions remained preliminary until tech giant entered the picture. With annual revenue exceeding $50 billion, tech giant represented the pinnacle of tech industry success. Their chief technology officer reached out directly, requesting a meeting to discuss potential synergies between our companies. The email arrived on the morning of my mother's unexpected phone call. "Carlton," she said, her voice carrying the awkward formality that had characterized our limited interactions over the past years. "We're having a family dinner this Saturday. Your father and I would appreciate if you could attend." The timing seemed strangely coincidental. Professional validation and family reconnection arriving simultaneously. After brief hesitation, I agreed to both meetings, unsure what either would bring. The drive to my parents' house felt surreal. 3 years had passed since I last visited, yet every turn in the road remained familiar muscle memory, guiding me through affluent neighborhoods where success was measured in square footage and luxury cars. My Honda Civic, practical and unassuming, would look out of place in their driveway. I parked behind my sister's BMW convertible, taking a moment to prepare myself. The house looked exactly as I remembered, colonial style, with perfect landscaping, a monument to conventional achievement. For years, this place represented both privilege and constraint, the security I'd sacrificed for freedom. My mother answered the door, her smile tight but genuine. "Carlton," she said, pulling me into a brief hug. "You look well." "Thanks, Mom. So do you." She led me through the foyer, into the formal dining room where my father and Rachel already Saturday. My father acknowledged me with a curt nod, not rising from his chair. Rachel offered a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're late," my father noted, though I'd arrived exactly on time. "Traffic," I lied, taking the empty seat across from Rachel. The table was set with the good china crystal glasses catching light from the chandelier above. My mother had prepared an elaborate meal: prime rib, roasted potatoes, asparagus with hollandaise sauce. Comfort food disguised as haute cuisine, familiar yet formal. Wine my mother offered, already pouring, without waiting for my response. Dinner began with uncomfortable small talk comments about weather, neighborhood developments, distant relatives I barely remembered. My contributions remained minimal, responding when necessary but offering little. I observed how my parents had aged, subtle lines around my mother's eyes, a slight stoop to my father's once rigid posture. "So Rachel," my mother prompted after serving the main course. "Tell Carlton your news." Rachel straightened diamond earrings, catching the light as she tossed her hair. "I've been made junior partner at Blackwell and Morgan," she announced, naming one of Seattle's most prestigious law firms, youngest in the firm's history. "Congratulations," I said sincerely. Despite our differences, I never doubted Rachel's intelligence or work ethic. "We're very proud," my father added, his voice warming in a way it never did when discussing me. The managing partner personally called to tell us how impressed they've been with her work on the West Side development case. Rachel detailed her recent legal triumph, something involving commercial real estate development and municipal zoning laws. My father asked questions that demonstrated intimate knowledge of her career, revealing regular conversations I wasn't privy to. My mother beamed throughout, occasionally touching Rachel's arm in maternal pride. Eventually, inevitably, attention turned to me. "And what about you, Carlton?" my father asked, his tone shifting from engaged to perfunctory. "Still doing your computer work?" The dismissive phrasing stung despite my professional success. "Yes, still in technology," I replied neutrally. "What exactly do you do now?" Rachel asked, cutting her meat with precise movements. "Help desk, support, website design." The condescension was clear, but I refused to rise to it. "I work in cybersecurity," I said simply, "helping businesses protect their data." "For which company?" my father pressed. A moment of decision whether to reveal SecureSync's success or maintain my privacy. Pride kept me silent about specifics. "A startup," I answered vaguely. My father exchanged knowing glances with Rachel. "Startups," he said, with practiced concern, "so unstable. 9 out of 10 fail within the first year." "Statistics I'm familiar with," I replied. "Your cousin Thomas just accepted a position at Goldman Sachs," my mother interjected brightly. "Entry level, of course, but with his MBA, they've put him on their executive track program." The implication hung in the air. Thomas had followed the approved path and reaped the rewards. My father nodded approvingly. "A solid choice. Banking provides stability, prestige, connections. The foundation for real success." Something about the word real ignited a slow burn inside me. 3 years of building something valuable, of proving myself on my own terms. Yet in this house, my accomplishments remained invisible because they didn't fit predetermined metrics. "I'm doing fine," I said quietly. "Fine." My father's eyebrows raised. "Is that the ambition we raised you with? Fine." Rachel set down her fork with deliberate precision. "Dad's right, Carlton. You had every advantage: private school, college opportunity, connections through the family. And you're what, 32 now? Still renting some apartment, working for someone else's company." "I have what I need," I replied, maintaining composure. My father scoffed, the sound piercing as it carried across the dining room. "You'll die penniless without our support. That independent streak makes for an interesting youth, but reality catches up eventually." Rachel laughed, adding her own barb. "Don't forget he still sleeps on hand-me-down sheets. Remember when we helped him move into that awful studio twin mattress on the floor, second-hand everything? Their certainty about my circumstances, all wrong, all assuming failure, should have angered me. Instead, I felt a strange calm. In 24 hours, I would sit across from tech giant's acquisition team, to discuss their offer of $8.7 million for SecureSync. The irony wasn't lost on me. "I appreciate your concern," I said, folding my napkin. "But I should probably head out. Early morning tomorrow." "Of course," my mother said quickly, perhaps sensing tension. "I'll pack some leftovers for you." "Don't bother," my father interjected. "He's made it clear he doesn't need anything from us." I stood suddenly tired of the dynamic that had defined our relationship for decades. "Thank you for dinner." "Congratulations again, Rachel." As I reached the door, my mother followed, her voice lowered. "He means well, Carlton. He just wants security for you." "I know, Mom. I'm more secure than you think." Driving away, I realized I felt no desire to prove them wrong, to announce my success or demand recognition. Their approval, once so crucial, had become irrelevant to my sense of self-worth. The freedom in that realization felt more valuable than any acquisition offer. The tech giant headquarters occupied a gleaming tower in downtown Seattle. Its lobby a statement of corporate success, 30-foot ceilings, abstract sculptures, and a wall displaying their numerous patents and awards. My meeting with their acquisition team was scheduled for 9 a.m., less than 12 hours after my uncomfortable family dinner. Security escorted me to a conference room on the 38th floor, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city and Puget Sound beyond. 5 people waited inside, 3 executives in tailored suits, a legal representative and their chief technology officer, Diane Winters, whose reputation in the tech community approached legendary status. Mr. Sullivan, Diane greeted me, extending her hand. "Thank you for coming. We've been following SecureSync's development with great interest." The meeting began with corporate pleasantries, compliments about our product, observations about the security industry landscape, subtle assertions of tech giants' market dominance. I listened more than spoke, observing the choreographed nature of their presentation. "We believe SecureSync would integrate perfectly with our enterprise solutions division," their VP of strategy explained, displaying slides showing potential synergies. "Your focus on usability alongside robust protection fills a gap in our current offering." Their initial offer came an hour into the meeting, $6 million for complete acquisition of SecureSync technology, client base, and talent. The figure delivered casually, as if discussing lunch options represented more money than I'd ever imagined possessing. Yet something felt wrong. $6 million undervalued what we'd built, especially considering our growth trajectory and proprietary technology. More importantly, the acquisition terms required our entire team to join tech giant for minimum 3-year contracts. "Your offer is generous," I acknowledged, "but lower than we anticipated given our market position and technology assets." Diane smiled slightly. "We understand your attachment to the company you've built, Mr. Sullivan. What figure would you consider appropriate?" $10 million, I stated calmly, with guaranteed autonomy for our division within tech giant's structure. Their legal representative almost visibly flinched, but Diane merely nodded. Bold. "Perhaps we could discuss $8 million with partial autonomy subject to quarterly review." The negotiation continued through lunch, details adjusted and terms refined. By 3 p.m., we reached tentative agreement $8.7 million for acquisition with guaranteed operational independence for 18 months and performance-based autonomy thereafter. The deal included retention packages for key team members and royalties on future implementations of our technology. "We'll have formal documents prepared within 48 hours, their legal team promised. Assuming no surprises in due diligence, we could close within 30 days. Walking out of Tech Giant's building, I felt strangely hollow. The deal represented validation of everything I'd built, financial security beyond what most people achieve in a lifetime. Yet questions lingered about identity, purpose, and what would come next. I didn't immediately tell our team about the acquisition offer, needing time to process the implications myself. Instead, I returned to my apartment, no longer the tiny studio my family imagined, but a comfortable 2-bedroom overlooking Lake Union. Still modest by tech founder standards, but a place that reflected intentional choices rather than limitations. For the next week, as legal teams exchanged documents and our financial records underwent scrutiny, I maintained my regular routine. I arrived at the office early, worked alongside our developers, and kept the potential acquisition confidential until details solidified. The final agreement arrived on a Tuesday morning 3 weeks after the initial meeting. $8.7 million for the company I'd built from nothing with additional earnout potential based on performance metrics. My personal share, after accounting for investors and employee stock options, amounted to just over $4 million. I signed the papers in our conference room, witnessed by our company attorney and Brian. The moment felt simultaneously momentous and anticlimactic, my signature transforming years of work into a substantial bank transfer. "Congratulations," Brian said afterward, clapping my shoulder. "Most founders never reach this point. You should be proud." Pride wasn't what I felt. Relief, perhaps. Vindication, certainly. But also uncertainty about my new identity. No longer the struggling entrepreneur, but something different, not yet defined. That evening, I shared the news with our team, explaining the acquisition terms and what it meant for everyone's future. Reactions ranged from excitement about tech giants' resources to concern about corporate culture changes. I promised to protect our company values through the transition, a commitment I intended to honor. With the deal finalized, practical matters demanded attention. Financial advisors helped structure investments to secure long-term stability. I remained in my apartment, rather than rushing to purchase property, preferring to make deliberate decisions rather than reactive ones. 3 weeks after signing the acquisition papers as integration planning with tech giant, unexpected news arrived from an unlikely source. My mother called on a Sunday afternoon, her voice strained. "Carlton," she began hesitantly. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "No, it's fine. Everything okay." A pause stretched between us. "Not exactly. Your father. There's been a situation at the bank." The situation, as she delicately phrased it, involved significant investment losses under my father's management. An audit discovered poor decision-making rather than malfeasance, but the result remained the same. He had been asked to resign effective immediately. His reputation in banking circles irreparably damaged. "He's not handling it well," my mother confided. 30 years at the same institution and now, nothing. Further conversation revealed additional complications. My mother had reduced her medical practice hours the previous year, anticipating early retirement. Rachel's law firm had recently announced merger plans, resulting in staff reductions, her junior partner position suddenly precarious. "We've had to make some adjustments," my mother explained vaguely. Those adjustments became clear over subsequent days through additional calls. My parents had significant mortgage debt on their house, secured with the expectation of my father's continued executive salary. Private club memberships, luxury vehicles, and Rachel's condo downtown all represented financial obligations they could no longer easily meet. A week later, Rachel called our first direct conversation in years. Her typical confidence had evaporated, replaced by barely concealed panic. "They're cutting half the junior partners in the merger," she admitted. "And I'm on the vulnerable list because I don't have enough billable clients of my own." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said sincerely. "That sounds incredibly stressful." "Look," she continued, voice lowering, "I know we haven't exactly been close, and I probably haven't been the most supportive sister, but things are really tough right now. Dad's a mess, Mom's worried sick, and my job's hanging by a thread." The implicit request hung unspoken pride, still preventing direct acknowledgement of need. I didn't immediately offer help, unsure what form it should take, or whether it would be accepted. 2 days later, my mother called again, this time with unmistakable distress in her voice. "The utilities have been shut off," she said quietly. "Your father didn't tell me we were behind on payments. We have no electricity, no water. Rachel's staying with a friend. But your father refuses to leave the house. He just sits in the dark." The image struck me forcefully. My proud father sitting alone in a darkened house, the carefully constructed facade of success finally crumbling around him. For years, he had defined worth through financial achievement and social standing. Without those markers, who was he? "Give me the account numbers," I said. "I'll take care of the utilities today." My mother's relief was palpable. "We'll pay you back, of course, once everything stabilizes. Don't worry about that right now. Just make sure Dad's okay." That evening, I contacted the utility companies directly paying the outstanding balances and an additional 6 months in advance. I arranged for service restoration the following morning, handling everything anonymously to preserve my father's dignity. The next decision proved more difficult: how to address the larger financial crisis without destroying my family's self-conception. Traditional loans would merely postpone inevitable reality. Direct gifts might be rejected outright. The solution came to me as I reviewed SecureSync's integration plan with Tech Giant's team. "I'd like to discuss establishing a consulting position," I told Diane Winters during our weekly call. "Not for myself, but for someone with extensive financial industry experience." Within days, I arranged an interview for my father with Tech Giant's Financial Services Division, a legitimate opportunity that matched his skills while allowing him to rebuild his professional identity. The position would provide stability without appearing as charity. For Rachel, I took a different approach, using SecureSync's legal contacts to secure informational interviews with firms specializing in technology law, an area where her intelligence could shine while benefiting from my industry connections. These arrangements took shape quietly, without my direct involvement visible to my family. Resources and opportunities rather than handouts, preservation of dignity alongside practical assistance. The approach felt right: supporting without controlling, helping without humiliating. 3 weeks after restoring their utilities, I invited my family to dinner, not at their house or a restaurant, but at my newly purchased lakefront home, a property I'd closed on just days earlier. The timing felt right to reveal my circumstances on neutral territory, away from the loaded environment of my childhood home. The expression on my father's face when he first stepped into my lakefront home contained multitudes: confusion, disbelief, the beginning awareness that his understanding of my life had been fundamentally flawed. My mother moved through the open-concept living area with quiet appreciation, touching modern furniture and admiring floor-to-ceiling windows that framed Lake Washington like a living painting. Rachel stood awkwardly by the entryway, clutching her purse, as if unsure whether to fully enter this unexpected reality. "This island, yours?" my father finally asked the question itself, revealing how completely he had misjudged my circumstances. "Closed last week," I confirmed, leading them to the dining area where I'd arranged catering from one of Seattle's finest restaurants. I thought it might be time for a proper housewarming. Dinner began with the same strained conversation that characterized our previous gathering, but with subtle shifts in power dynamics. My father, once dominating any room with certainty, now seemed diminished, watching me carefully as if seeing a stranger. Rachel's usual sharp comments remained absent, replaced by cautious questions about the neighborhood and property values. As we finished the main course, I decided it was time for transparency. "I imagine you're wondering about all this," I said, gesturing to encompass the house and implied lifestyle. "The last time we spoke, you had certain impressions about my career choices." My father set down his fork with deliberate control. Clearly, those impressions were incomplete. 3 years ago, I founded a cybersecurity company called SecureSync. I explained, keeping my voice neutral rather than triumphant. We developed proprietary security solutions for mid-sized businesses. Last month, we were acquired by Tech Giant for $8.7 million. The silence that followed felt absolute. My mother's hand covered her mouth, eyes widening. Rachel stared at her plate, shoulders tense. My father's expression shifted through disbelief, calculation, and finally something approaching respect. "Why didn't you tell us?" my mother finally asked. The question deserved honesty. "Because success on your terms wasn't what I was seeking. I needed to build something that reflected my values, not justify my choices to people who had already decided I was failing." "Carlton," my father began, voice uncharacteristically hesitant, "I never wanted you to fail. I wanted security for you. Stability. You wanted confirmation that your path was the only valid one," I corrected gently. "But different people need different routes. What worked for you would have broken me." The conversation that followed lasted hours, painful but necessary. My father spoke about his recent professional disgrace, voice cracking when describing the moment he was asked to surrender his office keys. My mother revealed fears about their financial future, the carefully constructed retirement now uncertain. Rachel admitted her growing disillusionment with corporate law, the prestige no longer worth the constant pressure and political navigation. "I've been thinking about that consulting position at Tech Giant," I said carefully when appropriate. "Their financial services division needs someone with banking experience." The recruiter mentioned they're particularly interested in candidates with traditional banking backgrounds who understand regulatory frameworks. My father looked up sharply. Are you arranging something?" I made an introduction, I acknowledged. "Whether you pursue it is entirely your decision. But your experience has value, even if not in the context you expected." Similar conversations with Rachel about technology law opportunities followed. Not handouts, but connections, respect for their abilities, while acknowledging current realities. The approach maintained dignity while offering practical paths forward. As the evening concluded, my father lingered in the kitchen while Rachel and my mother explored the house more thoroughly. He stood awkwardly, hands in pockets, looking out at the lake before turning to me. "I was wrong about you," he said simply. "Not just about your success, but about what success means. I measured everything by a ruler that made sense in my world." "We all use the measuring tools we're given," I replied. "Until we find better ones." "When did you become so wise?" A small smile softened his face. "Probably around the time I started failing by your standards and succeeding by my own." His hand reached out tentatively, resting briefly on my shoulder, the most physical affection he had shown in years. "I'm proud of you, son. Not because of this house or the money, but because you had the courage to find your own way. That's something I never managed." The admission cost him visibly decades of certainty, giving way to humility. I recognized the gift in his vulnerability, the beginning of a relationship based on mutual respect, rather than authority and judgment. In the months that followed, our family dynamics underwent subtle transformation. My father accepted the consulting position at Tech Giant, bringing valuable institutional knowledge to their financial compliance team. My mother reduced her medical practice, further focusing on teaching medical students rather than clinical hours. Rachel explored opportunities in technology law, eventually joining a firm specializing in data privacy regulations. Our relationships evolved gradually, old patterns occasionally reasserting themselves before giving way to healthier interactions. We established regular family dinners, no longer formal affairs fraught with comparison, but casual gatherings where genuine conversation replaced performance. For my part, I found new purpose after the acquisition. With financial security established, my focus shifted to creating opportunities for others. Like my younger self, talented individuals without traditional credentials. I established a scholarship fund for self-taught programmers, providing mentorship alongside financial support. The fund's first recipient reminded me powerfully of myself at 20, brilliant, determined, but doubtful of her place in an industry that often values pedigree over potential. Watching her confidence grow under proper mentorship provided satisfaction beyond any acquisition payout. 6 months after our revelatory dinner, I invited my family to the scholarship fund's launch event. My father, now more comfortable in his consulting role, engaged genuinely with young developers, offering business perspective without judgment. My mother connected several medical technology students with contacts from her teaching hospital. Rachel provided free legal consultation to startups navigating data regulations. That evening, observing my reconstituted family contributing value through service rather than status, I recognized the true lesson of my journey. Success had never been about financial validation or proving critics wrong. It was about creating space for authentic expression, both for myself and eventually for others. The measuring sticks that once defined worth in our family, prestigious degrees, corporate titles, social standing, had been replaced by more meaningful metrics: integrity, positive impact, personal fulfillment. My father's painful professional fall had ultimately freed him from the same constraints he once imposed on me. My mother rediscovered joy in teaching rather than status. Rachel found purpose in helping emerging businesses navigate complex legal landscapes. As for me, I discovered that the most satisfying accomplishment wasn't building a valuable company, but building a meaningful life. One where success aligned with personal values rather than external expectations. Have you ever had to forge your own path against family expectations? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey of finding your own definition of success resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming obstacles and creating authentic success. And if you know someone struggling with family pressure or trying to find their own way, share this video with them. Sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, true success isn't measured by others' rulers, but by the life you're proud to live each day.